What if you could vanquish depression with a single happy thought? You can't. Now, while there's no serotonergic light switch that you can flip to turn yourself into Pharrell, it might be parody what I'm about to sing. There are definitely habits of thinking and modes of relating to the world that can generate less or more suffering. We're going to be taking a look at 10 cognitive distortions that might make your mind a swamp well worth draining. These 10 distortions come from Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy by Dr. David Burns. Feeling Good was published in 1980. Yeah, 1980. And it was sort of revolutionary for the time. Basically, it got the ball rolling with the concept of bibliotherapy, which is therapy through reading. And I guess you could say that I've been a bibliotherapist, an auto-bibliotherapist from way back. Feeling Good was actually really important to me when I first started challenging my self-concept and trying to broaden my mental health horizons a little bit. So I'm planning on doing a few different videos overviewing various exercises and concepts from the book, and I'll probably do a full-fledged and thorough book review at some point. Now, I do have one caveat. There is some overlap between the distortions, so if anything seems a little redundant, it might be better to think of these all as facets on one single crystal of cognitive decay. So a few weeks ago, a good friend of mine had a birthday party at a bowling alley, and as much as I love him and as much as I wanted to celebrate his looming mortality, I felt a lot of resistance initially to the concept of going, mainly due to my social anxiety, and I'm going to use this particular example to kind of explore all 10 cognitive distortions in ways that they hypothetically or maybe actually played out in my head at the time. So the first cognitive distortion we're going to be talking about is called all or nothing thinking. So all or nothing thinking refers to our tendency to try to carve the world up into two distinct categories. Things are either black or white, always, never, yes, no. So with the birthday party example, I told myself things like, I never have any fun when I go to things like this. I never have any fun. You know, I'm completely disregarding a huge pile of data to the contrary when I say that. So this friend of mine has a lot of friends that I don't really know that well, and in situations like that, it can be hard for me to not say, well, I always struggle to make friends and no one there likes me. I always struggle. No one likes me. You can quickly see how there's a snowball effect. The second cognitive distortion is called overgeneralization. Overgeneralization refers to our tendency to cherry pick one single point of data and then project forward an entire pattern of failure. So I could say, well, last time I went bowling, I gutterballed every other time I threw the ball. So why would I ever want to go through that again? Why would I want to publicly humiliate myself in that way? And so there's a sort of logic to that. At least whenever you're in that depressed headspace, it's hard to break out of that and to think that there could be alternative possibilities. Which brings me to the third cognitive distortion, which is mental filtering. Mental filtering isn't so much a single thought or proposition that goes through your head. I like to think of it more as the entire curtain that's being pulled in front of your thinking. So you could think of it as the effect of all of these different distortions at play, and so everything is filtered. It's like you're looking at the world through sunglasses. So instead of being a single distorted thought, it's like a somber prism through which all of your other thoughts are traveling and getting mangled in the process. The fourth cognitive distortion is disqualifying the positive. This is something that I'm especially vulnerable to. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations where I've said things like, well, I just don't have any friends, you know? I can't make friends. I don't have any friends. And I'll be talking to a friend when I'm saying this. And, you know, eventually and fairly, they say, well, what about me? Like, I'm putting all of this time and effort into being here for you, and you're completely disregarding that. And, I mean, basically, I've literally said, yeah, but you don't count. Like, I've known you for so long at this point that our friendship is essentially Stockholm Syndrome. Now, if you can't tell, that's actually really insulting and really hurtful. And like I said, I've almost jeopardized friendships because of this. So, with the bowling birthday party example, it's easy to see how, you know, even if I did gutter ball every other time, the last time I went bowling, I'm overlooking all of the times that I didn't gutter ball. I'm overlooking that one strike that I got after my second beer and the accompanying high that I felt when everybody cheered me on. So the fifth cognitive distortion is jumping to conclusions. And this one is kind of a cheat because there are two subcomponents. And they're both fairly self-explanatory.
But I'm gonna explain them.
So the first subcomponent is
fortune telling.
Essentially, this is me looking at the prospect of going to this party and saying, I'm not going to have any fun. I don't know what's going to happen at this birthday party. Maybe I'll have a great time. There's no way of truly knowing, but there's a bit of arrogance that comes with saying, well, yeah, but it's always been this way, and it's going to be this way again, and now I can just stay in my shell of security. You know, maybe my favorite celebrity is going to be there. Maybe Guy Fieri will be at the bowling alley. So the other subcomponent is mind reading. Let's imagine that I have a huge crush on somebody in this bowling group, like a friend of a friend that I don't really know so well. And let's imagine that as her eyes kind of scan past me, I notice a grimace on her face. Mind reading would be thinking, oh, she looked at me and she's completely revolted by my existence. When, you know, my entire life might feel like evidence for that conclusion, it could just be that she shouldn't have eaten that bowling alley corn dog. So for number 6, we have magnification and minimization, also known as the binocular effect. Basically, this is where you zoom in on certain things and you kind of zoom out on other things to maintain a sense of negative atmosphere. Again, you can think of zooming out as disqualifying certain things that don't fit this depressive schema that you have. So I might look at a person in the bowling group and say, man, he's so charismatic. Why would I want to be around him? It just makes me feel so bad being myself in his presence. And so what I'm doing is I'm fixating on one tiny facet of his personality, but maybe he's as bad at bowling as I am. And I'm really not that bad at bowling, but let's just run with the hypothetical here. So next up we have emotional reasoning. This is the idea that the way that I feel necessarily reflects the way that things actually are. So when I'm in that really bad headspace, I just take it for granted that this is the way that the world actually is. I can't escape the confines of my own skull, and that's a really tough one to kind of push beyond. So to go for some low-hanging fruit, in the bowling example, if I feel like everybody hates me, then they hate me. I'm not asking anybody. God forbid. That would be really, really hard to do. So yeah, I'm just running with that initial assumption, come what may. Distortion number 8 is the dreaded should statement. In the book, I think that he calls this masturbation. This distortion involves telling yourself, I have to be this, I must do that, I should do this. And should is kind of a straitjacket in a way. It doesn't really give you room for growth. Basically, if you fall short of that standard, the negative reaction that you're going to have is going to be so painful that even if your ideal is coming from a good place, you're just going to fall short of it and feel disheartened and not want to pursue it. So for me, I have this really horrible belief that I have to be the best at everything that I do. Otherwise, there's no real point in doing it. And that definitely comes into play with bowling. Like I said earlier, I'm not a bad bowler, but I'm not the best. So why bother? You're not going to get far in life with that attitude. Distortion number 9 is labeling and mislabeling. So if I walk into this bowling alley and I'm telling myself, I'm such a dork, I'm such a loser, I'm friendless, I'm a monster, well, I'm not really putting myself into a headspace where I can contest that. In life, what you go looking for is what you tend to find. So it's kind of a Bader Meinhof of the soul. Bader Meinhof? Basically, if that's your framework, then you're going to find abundant evidence. And finally, we have personalization. This is where you take a negative external event and you give yourself way too much credit for it. Like you think that you are to blame. So if I go to this birthday party and my friend has a bad time, I might say, well, he could pick up on my negative mood. He knew that people weren't really enjoying being around me, and I was just I was the one thing that was ruining everything. And if I hadn't been there, all the gears would have been turning right, and he would have been happy. When, maybe it's more realistic that he, like a lot of people, doesn't like getting older. And, I've had birthday parties where even though I'm trying to have a good time, there's like this thought in the back of my head saying, death is coming. But yeah, I shouldn't assume that my bad mood has that much power over other people. And if it does, that's not really my fault or my responsibility. I can only I should try to counteract my mood, but I'm not in control of what other people do with that. And so that's it for the 10 cognitive distortions. Next time in the auto alchemical arsenal, we'll try to look at some ways to push back against the distortions. So, until next time.